So yes, like how Pastor Liz said, there are so many moving parts, but God is always standing right beside us in every single part of it, whether we see him or we don't. And that's exactly what I'm talking about today. So it kind of just flows hand in hand together. We are picking up and continuing Acts. We're studying Acts 23 today. And we just have 3 more weekends to go through the book of Acts, counting this week. And that means we'll be in the week of Thanksgiving and then soon Christmas after. And where one thing is ending, but so much more exciting things are starting. But let's just not get too far ahead. Let's focus on the now and what God is doing now and what he continues to do and how he continues to teach us each day, that we don't want to miss a teaching, because every teaching he gives us is for the better. It is to transform us even more, to bring more into the kingdom, and to bring our community closer together. He works in the ups and downs, in the beauty and in the ugly of life, to the found and to the lost. Through it all, he stands beside us through each situation. We have seen how God stands beside us throughout many scriptures. And today we're going to highlight one of the stories where he stands by Paul. We have recently been in the drama-filled parts of Acts where things have been popping off left and right. Paul has been meeting with people. New souls are coming into the kingdom. People are plotting against him, and every move that he makes, they don't like how what Paul is doing is interrupting their lives. And so they're like, no, we need to do something about this guy because he's messing with my money. He's messing with my control over people. We need to do something about it. And merchants just not liking their businesses being impacted. Riots are being instigated, and people are plotting against him in every single way. And he's just continuing to remind believers to be aware of the false teachers that seem to be controlling the city and control every single way, and how it is all trying to pull them away from the truth. And people don't like that. But the thing about Paul that we've been reading through the book of Acts is that he never shies away from any of it. He's like, no, I'm going to say the truth no matter what the outcome is, because God has put me in this moment right now to share these things. And I know that he is right beside me through it all. He has not left me alone. He has pulled me through every single situation, and he's never going to leave me. And he said, you know what? If it is my time to go, if I have fulfilled God's plan for me on earth, he's like, amazing. I am not scared of death because I know the goodness that comes after it. He is always ready to embrace everything set before him. So we're going to pick up right here in Acts 23, looking at verses 1 through 10. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to it. And if you don't worry, we're going to have it on the screen for you. It says this, and they were looking intently at the council. Paul said, brothers, I have lived my life before God in all good consciousness up unto this day. And the high priest Ananias, okay, let's not get this confused with the Ananias he was talking about previously. This is a new Ananias, a guy that is working against him. And Ananias commanded those who stood behind him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, God is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. Are you sitting to judge me according to the law, and yet contrary to the law, you order me to be struck? Those who stood by said, Would you revile God's high priest? And Paul said, I do not know, brothers, that he was a high priest, for it is written, you shall not speak evil of the ruler of your people. Now when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in council, brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisees. It is with respect unto the hope and the resurrection of the dead that I am on trial. And when he had said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The assembly was divided, for the Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, nor angel, nor spirit, but the Pharisees acknowledge them all. Then a great clamor arose, and some of the scribes of the Pharisees' party stood up and contended sharply. We find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit or angel spoke to him? And when the dissension became violent, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by them, commanded the soldiers to go down, take him away from among them by force, and bringing him into the barracks. It is easy to see here that Paul was just getting so fed up with what's happening. He's like, they're saying one thing to benefit them, but then they're acting in the complete opposite of what they just said. They are picking and choosing what to follow. And he's like, he just called the high priest a whitewashed wall. So I was looking this up. I was like, what does that even mean? I was like, oh, it basically means they have the landlord special upon them. Meaning they have all of these holes, all of these imperfections, and they just put a nice white coat of fresh paint on top so it looks good, but underneath it all, it's all sorts of gross and nasty. Exactly what the landlord special is. They just paint over everything, hiding all the imperfections, just so it looks good on the outside, but when you look underneath, it's rotten. The high priest would say that he follows God, but everything underneath is doing everything in the name of the law, but without following the law. The high priest is picking and choosing what he wants. Only the choosing the laws to follow to get him what he wants, hence the term being whitewashed wall being used. The difference between Paul having an outburst and speaking rudely to the high priest, he acknowledges that, oh, I went against the law. He knows what is written and how he shouldn't be speaking to the high official in that manner. But here, instead of saying, oh no, I did something wrong, let me just keep going so no one knows that I'm wrong. He's like, no, hold up. I'm going to acknowledge what I did wrong. And I'm going to apologize because the word says that I am to not speak ill of the high officials. He didn't hold on to it and ignore it because it would benefit him in the moment to just keep on going, to pour into the distension that's going on within the council. He spoke the truth. He said, let me see what I've done wrong. How many of us are more inclined to say, hold up, I did something wrong. Let me stop. Let me bring forth what I've done wrong and let me apologize for it. How many of us want to just kind of shove it aside and like forget it never happened? I know it's easier for me to just like, let's just shove it aside. Because then you don't have to deal with the guilt of it. Because I feel like guilt is one of the worst feelings to have to deal with. And then realizing and admitting to those around you that, hey, I did wrong. Because as people, we want to think we did all the things right. That we know what was right. That we continue to do what's right. And there's nothing wrong. But here it's showing like Paul that we think so highly of, Paul that was one of the greatest missionaries ever, did all of these things. He did wrong, but he didn't push it to the side. He acknowledged it and was like, hey, I'm sorry for what I did wrong, and I acknowledge that. He did it. He always spoke truth and did it no matter what the outcome was. Even with tensions already being high and distension building up, he continued to do it, even when things took a violent turn. And something I noticed as I was reading, it says when things were turning, he was taken away by force. He didn't go willingly. So maybe he just didn't want to go. Maybe he said all this stuff was happening, but he said, no, they still need to hear the truth. Even when my life is in danger, they need to hear the truth. That maybe he just wasn't fearful of it, and he just wanted to stay and speak to them to hopefully, maybe they will see the reasoning behind it all. He wasn't afraid. Why else would they have to take him by force? He knows that the Lord is going to protect him because he has been shown it time and time again. He has been shown that God stands beside us in difficult and dangerous situations. And he shows up God always shows up. And this is how he did. If we go back to verse 11, it says this: the following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Take courage, for as you have testified to the facts about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify also in Rome." God showed up and said, "You have done what I need you to do here, and I need you to do it some more, so I'm going to get you there." He's not going to say, "Hey, I'm going to send you to Rome, but I don't know if you're going to make it there. But if you make it there, do the same thing." He's like, "No, you need to go to Rome and do what I've called you to do, and I'm going to protect you along the way." This is just another time where God is showing up for Paul. And the Lord knew there was going to be a turn of events. And God continues to prepare the path before and put the things into place so that he is where he needs to be. God knew what was going to happen and how unhappy everyone is going to be, how riled up they were, and how angry they were going to be at Paul. So he lined the items up for him and protected him and stood beside him in the difficult and dangerous situations. It may not have been in the way he thought. God moves in ways we don't ever think of. But he always moves, and he never leaves. He doesn't abandon. God plans to take care of his people in each situation for people today, just as he did for Paul. It's not just something for the biblical times that God is only going to protect them. No, he wants to protect you and your family every single day. Jumping forward a little bit to verse 23, we can see how God stood beside him and guided his way. In Acts 23, verses 23 and 24, it says that he called two of the centurions and said, "Get ready 200 soldiers with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to go as far as Caesarea at the 3rd hour of the night. Also provide a mount for Paul to ride and bring him safely to Felix the governor." God put things in the path to protect him, to make sure he got through this dangerous situation to the next place that he has called him to be. God provided the path out of the dangerous and onto the next, to the place where he wrote the letters that we have spent months studying on our past Wednesday nights, where he has guided so many churches without even being there. If he wasn't guided out of those situations, we wouldn't have a lot of the New Testament be wiped out. He wouldn't have had the place to write, the people to come and meet. I mean, God can do anything. But how much would it have been changed? How different the context would have been. Where we've seen time and time again through each of the prison epistles is that he is a prisoner of Christ, not a prisoner of the Romans, but he continues to work through it all as a prisoner of Christ, as a servant of Christ in every single way. Paul left those who plotted to kill him with more people surrounding him to protect him, to make sure that he made it there safely. All because God moved the things together. And thinking of this story, I immediately thought of the VeggieTales story that also relates to a biblical story, but thinking about how God stood beside another person, another group of people in the book of Daniel, and how God stands amazingly right beside his followers in the most difficult situations. So go with me to Daniel chapter 3, which focuses on the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they refused to bow down and follow King Nebuchadnezzar's command. And he threw those three in a fiery furnace that was so hot that when some of King Nebuchadnezzar's people threw them in, They died trying to throw him in. And we're going to pick up in verse 24 because they made it into the furnace. But we're going to see the reaction of God standing right beside him in this dangerous situation. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in a haste. He declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." He answered and he said, "But I see 4 men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like the Son of God." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire. The prefect, the governors, the king counselor gathered together and saw the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their head was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed. No smell of fire had come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent their angel and delivered his servants who trusted him and set aside the king's command and yielded their bodies up rather than serve and worship any god except their own." They were bound up so they couldn't move. They couldn't try and escape. King Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to perish in this fire. He said, "No, there ain't no way they're coming out of this." But God had other plans. He said, "I could just leave them in here bound still and nothing happened to them." He's like, "No, but I'm going to do something more. I'm going to have them unbound so that they are walking around and they're just chilling and people can see through the shadows of the fire that there's no screaming. There doesn't look like there's bodies standing and then they're not. But they were chilling, walking around, and there were more than the 3 they had initially thrown in. That there was a 4th man in the fire. But not only that, when they came out, it was like they were never thrown in. God was literally standing next to them in one of the most dangerous situations, a situation that should have taken them out immediately. God was standing next to them. So hearing these stories, you can't tell me that God doesn't stand next to us in dangerous situations. I've read the stories in the Bible and read the scriptures to look it up. There's so many stories that I could show you of where God is standing next to people in these dangerous, difficult situations, how he stands beside them and pulls them through, but we just don't have the time for that. But I encourage you to go and read and find these stories for yourself so you're not just taking it for the face value of the scriptures that I've pulled out for today, that you go and find it yourself and see how God moves. And the scriptures just continue to prove that God is not going to abandon you. He's going to be with you. And Isaiah 43, verse 2, wasn't just written for figurative language, but in truth. Isaiah 43, verse 2 says this, "When you have passed through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. And when you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you." God was with the Israelites as they crossed the Red Sea. They were not overwhelmed by the depths of the sea or the Egyptians coming after them. Just as God stood next to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego through the flames did not consume them. Just as he's with Paul through getting him through the council. Just as he stands beside us today. He will not only stand beside you, but he will also uphold you. In Isaiah 41, verse 10, It says, fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God will not abandon. He stands right beside us visibly in the difficult and dangerous situations, but also he stands right beside us in the invisible. God works in the visible and invisible. It may not have his big signature on it, like the fourth man in the fire. You knew that was God. But he coordinates all of these things in the background, just as he did for Paul when the plot to kill him became a real threat. He used the young to get the pieces moving. And we're going to go back to Acts 23 and see how exactly he places the moving parts together, without it seeming like God literally appearing either in a burning bush and saying, hey, I need you to go do this right now. No, but God will move in the background. We're going to go back to verse 12 and pick up from there. When it was the day, Jews made a plot and bound themselves by oath neither to eat nor drink till they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who made this conspiracy. They went to the chief priests and elders and said, we have strictly bound ourselves by an oath to taste no food till we have killed Paul. Now, therefore, along with the council, give notice to the tribune to bring him down to you, as though you were going to determine his case more exactly, and we are ready to kill him before he comes near. Now, the son of Paul's sisters heard of their ambush, so he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Paul has called one of the centurions and said, take this young man to the tribune, for he has something to tell him. So he took him and brought him to the tribune and said, Paul the prisoner called me and asked me to bring this young man to you, as he has something to say. The tribune took him by the hand and going aside him privately, what is it that you have to tell me? And he said, the Jews have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as though they are going to inquire somewhat more closely about him, but do not be persuaded by them, for more than 40 of their men are lying in ambush for them, who have bound themselves by oath neither to eat nor drink till they have killed him. And now they are ready, waiting for your consent. So the tribune dismissed, and the young men charging him, tell no one that you have informed me of these things. Who knows why a young person, Paul's nephew, was chosen versus someone who may have more credibility? It could be because maybe the tribune had a soft spot for the young, and his heart was softened enough by someone young coming up to him and sharing what he had learned and taking it for face value instead of just taking it as gossip, as someone just trying to just stir up trouble. If it was an older person, the tribune could have said, I've had enough of these older men in front of me, and all they're wanting to do is start fights and cause harm to people who, in our Romans law, do not deserve it. He could just be tired of all these old guys trying to start fights. And they needed a change of face where somebody who hasn't been causing trouble, who has nothing to gain in this situation, to come before. We may never know the real reason, but you know who knows the real reason? God does. He knew exactly what type of person was needed for this situation. And because God moves in the background and sets the people up to hear, set it up for Paul's sister to hear it and for her to have the confidence in her son to go and run to Paul. And then Paul's like, okay, Paul could have just said, hey, I heard this from somebody. He's like, no, I need my nephew to go to them and share exactly what I've heard. All because God wasn't done with him yet. He had plans for him in Rome to continue doing the work and continue speaking the truth. God knew all of this was happening before it even happened and put the right pieces into place for the right time. Just as he did for Queen Esther. If you'll turn with me to Esther chapter 4, we're going to read there about how God set things up for her. He set all the pieces into motion for the right thing. He placed her in the king's favor to save the Jewish people from being hurt, and she fasted and trusted that God would hold her up. And God is moving in the background all throughout the book. If you want to see a story in its entirety of God never being mentioned once but still continue to move, read the story of Queen Esther. God moves all throughout the background. He is moving in the invisible, placing the right people on the right track to meet with the right people to save a person in the right time, to set things up to save the Jewish people. It was only by God that she was placed to be queen, had the king's favor, and that he was a king that actually listened to his queen, that actually heard what she had to say and cared enough to go on and listen. But also God worked to make sure that she had the right godly people surrounding her and reminding her to be faithful and courageous because God has set up the path before her and that he will get her through this situation. In Esther chapter 4, verse 14, it says this. Verses 13. So they sent back the answer, "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you keep silent this time, relief and deliverance will arise from the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And you know whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this." Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, "Go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa and hold a fast on my behalf. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young woman will fast as you do. Then I will go to the king. Through it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." She said, "Let's fast together." Everyone. She wanted everybody to fast together, not just her because she was going to be the one going before the king, but she wanted the whole community to fast with her, that God will move and God will use them to protect the Jewish people, and that the king would be softened enough to hear exactly what he has to say, even though it was against what one of his advisors wanted. And she said, "If I perish, I perish. Because it's against the law for me to do this, and I'm going to do it anyway. Because God has lined up the pieces to put me here for a reason, and I'm going to do it. But I have faith and courage that know that God's going to pull me through it because this is the plan that he has shown. He has set up all the right pieces. The Lord will move and place the right step before you, just as he did for Esther, just as he did for Paul, and he will do it for you. We can know that it's not just by the stories, but by what Psalms 34 says. Psalms 34, verse 7. Says, "The angels of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them." Those who honor the Lord will be encamped by his angels, and he will deliver them, keeping on honoring and following the Lord. We can always take courage in knowing that we are not alone, that we are not abandoned, even when we don't see things with God's big signature upon it. We know that he is still there. We might not be able to see it because we're too close to what's going on, but once we look back on it and we are further back from the situation, then we can see God's signature on it. Sometimes we're just too close. And sometimes we need to take a step back. But we just need to remember that we are not abandoned and we are not alone. That He stands beside us through it all. Paul writes later on in one of his prison letters to the people of Corinth, in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 6, it says, "We are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Yes, we are good couragers, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please Him." Paul is encouraging us here to walk by faith, not by sight. That no matter where we are, we should be aiming to please the Father. And remember the scriptures that have been given out before, that we will not be abandoned. He will take us through the depths of the waters, and we will not be consumed out. He will pull us through the fire, and the fire will not consume us. And through all of it, we should be aiming to please the Father. We have all the answers for the right actions to place or for the lack of action that we need to take. Sometimes we want to move and do something, and the Lord's like, hold up. Take a second. Don't do something on it yet. I need you to take a second, and I need you to pray on it and really do things in the way that I want you to do things, not in the way that your flesh wants you to do things. Because the Lord calls us to do things in a special way. So how do you want to respond to that? Because we're going to have to answer for what we did or for what we didn't do one day. We are going to have to respond before the throne. Do you want to say you didn't do something for the fear of not being pulled through it, the fear of the consequences that are to come? Or do you want to answer, I didn't do it because you told me not to do it? Like, I felt you prompting in the way to not do that. You were stopping me because you needed me to do something in a godly way. And I was going to act in the way of the flesh. Or are you going to say, Lord, I did it. I've done everything I can in the best of my ability to do everything into the pleasing of you and to what you have called me, and had the faith to know that you were pulling me, you were right beside me, you were walking by faith. I was walking by faith and knowing that you were always right beside me and that you had never abandoned him. How do you want to answer for that? As we prepare for the worship team to come up here, I want to leave you with this one last part. In the Great Commission, we have heard the part of going into the nations more times than I can count. The part where just go into the nations and make disciples. But what I want to focus on is in Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. Teaching them to observe all that I command you. And right here, and behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. It's not saying just as you go into the nations, I am with you. So if you're at home, I'm not with you. No, he says, I am with you always to the end of the age. And stand with me. And as you follow God's plan, he will stand beside you in the difficult, dangerous, and the visible and invisible. He is going to extend his right hand to strengthen you. We just need to trust in God in our struggles and expect his deliverance. Not just hope, but expect his deliverance. It's one thing to just hope. Say, maybe one day God will pull me through it. But to say, no, I know God is going to pull me through it. Know that Jesus stands beside you in your trouble, even if you don't hear an audible voice or see visions of him moving. Understand that he has raised people up to do things, to raise people up to move in a certain way. He has called the unexpected to make the right path open and safe before you. That he delivers peace in these moments, that he will protect you and not let the world consume you. But that's when we stand beside him and rely on his strength. And as we go into a moment of worship, I'm going to pray with you, and just know that these altars are always open through worship, through it all, to just leave it before the Lord and come before him. And whatever you feel the Lord stirring in your heart, come before him and just let it all out. Or if you need somebody to pray with you. We are meant to live life together. We're not meant to live it alone. And so when you are having these struggles through these difficult, dangerous situations, or you're struggling seeing God, feeling like, hey, I don't see him. I'm struggling here in the faith of it. We want to be here with you and pray with you about it.